Area 51 is one of the most mysterious places in the world. This military base is often associated with extraterrestrial races, and not without reason. In today's video, I invite you to discover the secrets of Area 51 that were revealed by one of its former employees. Perhaps after this information, you'll change your opinion about the existence of aliens. Enjoy watching. The history of Area 51 began in the year 1955, when the United States Air Force and the CIA acquired land on the southern shore of the dried-up Groom Lake in the state of Nevada. Originally, the base was created for testing the newest reconnaissance aircraft at the time, the Lockheed U-2, capable of flying to an altitude of up to 21,300 meters and conducting surveillance over enemy territory. According to official data, Area 51 is a test site where experimental aircraft and weapon systems are developed and tested. Such legendary aircraft as the A-12 Oxcart, SR-71 Blackbird, and F-117 Nighthawk were tested here. This strategic facility might never have attracted attention if it hadn't eventually become the subject of countless discussions, secrets, and conspiracy theories. The main reason for this particular interest in Area 51 is the fact that the U.S. government categorically denied the very existence of the base for a long time. However, people knew the facility existed, but no one knew what was actually there. Random sightings of unusual flying objects, strange lights in the sky, and total silence from officials sparked numerous rumors. Theories that Area 51 stores the remains of alien spacecraft and conducts experiments on extraterrestrial beings became especially popular. According to some sources, special rooms were discovered on the base that were clearly not intended for humans. Their size matched beings no taller than 1 meter. In the year 2013, the CIA officially acknowledged the existence of the base, since continued denial contradicted the Freedom of Information Act. Along with that, some documents were declassified describing the history and objectives of the base. However, most information about its operations remains secret, which continues to fuel public interest in the facility. It is simply impossible to enter the territory of Area 51. The base's security system is considered one of the strictest in the world. The site is surrounded by multiple layers of protection, including tall barbed wire fences, motion detectors, surveillance cameras, and armed guards. The perimeter is constantly patrolled. Observing what's happening at Area 51 is not possible even using drones or planes, as the airspace over the facility is controlled by specialized air defense systems. Access to Area 51 is strictly regulated and allowed only with special clearance. Every employee undergoes thorough security screening, including background checks and medical evaluations. Even those with access to the base may move only within specific zones corresponding to their clearance level. In addition, all employees are strictly prohibited from disclosing any information about what happens at the base. Under threat of dismissal and criminal prosecution, they must keep not only research details secret, but even the very fact of working at Area 51. Former employees sign a non-disclosure agreement that remains in effect long after their departure. Despite the strict security measures, the history of Area 51 includes incidents where employees broke the secrecy rules. One of the most famous was Robert Lazar, better known as Bob Lazar. Robert Lazar was born on the 26th of January, 1959, in the state of Florida, United States. According to him, he earned 2 master's degrees in physics, one from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and another from the California Institute of Technology, and then began his career in the defense industry, where he quickly gained a reputation as a talented specialist. In the late 1980s, Lazar's life changed dramatically when he received a job offer to work at a top-secret facility located near Area 51. Lazar claimed he had been hired as a nuclear physicist to work at a site known as S4, which was located near the famous military base. At his new workplace, the physicist studied unusual flying vehicles. In the year 1989, Lazar decided to break his confidentiality agreement and gave a series of public interviews in which he described his work in detail. The reasons that led him to take this step remain unclear. Some believe he was driven by a belief that the public deserves to know the truth. Others speculate it might have been part of a more complex plan. The first interview that made Bob Lazar known around the world took place in May of 1989 on the KLS TV channel. The interviewer was journalist George Knapp. In his initial conversation with Knapp, Lazar appeared under the pseudonym Dennis, with his face hidden, and later he eventually revealed his identity. In his interviews, Lazar presented detailed descriptions of what he had seen and what he was working on at the facility. According to the physicist, the S4 facility contained special hangars designed to store 9 disc-shaped flying vehicles. These hangars had a unique structure with enhanced ventilation and microclimate control systems. The crafts were stored in controlled environments to prevent possible reactions with Earth's atmosphere. Lazar paid particular attention in his stories to the unusual materials from which the crafts were made. He described metallic alloys of incredible strength, transparent materials capable of changing their properties, composites not found in nature on Earth, as well as special coatings that protected against high temperatures. Another shocking revelation made by Lazar was about the system of anti-gravity propulsion. He claimed that these systems operated on principles completely different from earthly technologies. According to him, the engines used a special element 115, whose principle of operation was based on manipulating gravity. The engine control system was fully automated, and their power reached astonishing levels. As for the classified element 115, Lazar claimed it was stored in special containers that met specific safety protocols. Only certain employees were authorized to work with the element. According to Lazar, element 115 had unique nuclear properties that Earth science was only beginning to study. The physicist also described in detail the laboratories where research on extraterrestrial technologies was conducted. There were analytical centers for studying materials, testing stands for system trials, computer complexes for simulations, and secured rooms for especially dangerous experiments. This series of scandalous interviews caused a huge public response and became the subject of numerous debates. Despite skepticism from many experts, Lazar's statements remain among the most discussed testimonies of possible contact with extraterrestrial civilizations. His descriptions were so detailed that many researchers are still trying to verify his claims. Although the official position of the authorities remains unchanged, all of these statements are said to have no factual basis. Lazar's own fate after his revelations was not easy. He faced serious pressure from authorities and lost his job in the defense industry. Later, it also came to light that MIT and Caltech denied having a student named Robert Lazar, which cast doubt on his degrees and employment at the Los Alamos National Laboratory. For many, this confirmed that Lazar was lying, but at the same time raised many questions. How could an ordinary man from the street be so knowledgeable in physics, chemistry, and military technology? Despite the wave of criticism, Lazar continued to insist on the truth of his claims. Bob Lazar never tried to profit from his story. On the contrary, he withdrew from the public eye for many years, avoided interviews, and stayed out of the spotlight. If he were simply a fame-seeking conspiracy theorist, his behavior would have been entirely different. Instead of continuing to make public appearances, he quietly turned to scientific business. However, in the year 2019, Lazar agreed to appear on Joe Rogan's podcast. In this interview, he not only confirmed his previous claims, but also hinted that new documents, including declassified photographs, could help prove the truth of his story. The podcast with Joe Rogan was highly successful and once again reignited public interest in the secrets of the U.S. government. Joe Rogan is known as a stand-up comedian, television host, actor, and UFC fight commentator. His career began with performances in comedy clubs, and later he became a television star, hosting the popular show Fear Factor on NBC. A special role in his career is played by the podcast The Joe Rogan Experience, which he launched in the year 2009. This show became one of the most popular in the world, where Rogan discusses a wide range of topics with his guests, from politics to philosophy. In his podcast, Rogan often explores themes of paranormal phenomena, including UFOs and Bigfoot. He openly expresses interest in unexplained phenomena, though he tries to approach these topics critically. Joe Rogan's podcast has featured many interesting guests discussing UFOs and the paranormal. Among the most notable were Hal Puthoff, a physicist who shared details about how senators and leading scientists conducted secret investigations into unexplained aerospace phenomena, and Elon Musk, with whom Rogan discussed the possibility of extraterrestrial presence on Earth. In the year 2019, Joe Rogan decided to invite Bob Lazar to his podcast, and, surprisingly, the physicist agreed to appear on the show. This conversation made many people reconsider the truthfulness of Lazar's previous interview claims. More than 20 years had passed since Bob Lazar's last interviews. During that time, many events occurred, and some previously classified documents were declassified. When Lazar first gave his interviews, many found it impossible to believe his claims. But now, things have changed. A high-profile interview took place on the 21st of June, year 2019. It is worth noting that this podcast became one of the most popular in the show's history. The conversation lasted more than 2 hours, and the video gathered more than 64 million views. During the podcast, Joe Rogan gave Lazar the opportunity to tell his story in detail. Since Lazar had given many interviews before, he returned once again to his famous claims about working at the S4 facility, where, according to him, he had been studying extraterrestrial technologies. He described in detail his memories of working with disc-shaped flying craft that used unique propulsion principles. In addition, the former employee of the secret base once again spoke about the mysterious element 115 and provided detailed descriptions of the hangar structures used to store alien spacecraft and the special materials from which they were built. Rogan, maintaining a professional skepticism, asked clarifying questions to get the most detailed answers. He was interested in the technical aspects of the technologies Lazar described, the facility access system, and the reasons why the former employee had decided to break the secrecy agreement. The physicist avoided none of the questions and answered them calmly and with remarkable precision. At the end of the conversation, Lazar shared his thoughts on why, in his opinion, the government is hiding information about alien technologies. He claimed that revealing these technologies could radically change the development of human civilization, especially in the fields of energy and transportation. This interview had such a powerful impact on public opinion that it became a catalyst for the emergence of a large-scale movement calling for the disclosure of information about Area 51. Many believe that this very podcast episode inspired the organizers of the now famous social media campaign that called for a storm on the military base. On the 27th of June, year 2019, 6 days after the Joe Rogan podcast with Bob Lazar, a social media user under the nickname SmileyCun, real name Maddie Roberts, created an event titled Storm Area 51, They Can't Stop All of Us. The idea was a mass march to the military base in the state of Nevada with the goal of freeing the aliens supposedly held by the U.S. government, according to conspiracy theorists. The organizer even proposed an unusual method of entry, running in the style of characters from the anime Naruto, allegedly allowing people to move faster than bullets. And although the idea seemed like a typical joke, it went viral. By the end of July, the event had attracted more than 3 million interested users. Of those, 2,100,000 declared their intent to attend, and another 1,500,000 expressed interest in simply watching the events unfold. Interestingly, authorities took the threat of this seemingly humorous event very seriously and began preparing for a possible breach. Several days before the scheduled date, the airspace above the base was completely closed, including a ban on the use of drones. At the gates, additional security measures appeared, spiked barriers, enhanced lighting, and extra barbed wire. The penalty for attempting to enter was a fine of $1,000. Finally, on the 20th of September, year 2019, the event took place. But the authorities had worried in vain. Instead of the expected 2 million people, only around 75 individuals gathered at the gates of the base. Only one person attempted to dig a tunnel and was arrested. Meanwhile, the U.S. Air Force published a threatening post on their social media, featuring an image of a bomber and a warning that weapons would be used if participants approached Area 51. However, the enthusiasts had no such intentions. Instead, they held a sort of festival near the military base, enjoying music and socializing. Later, the Air Force apologized for the post, as there was no real threat to the classified facility. Of course, this event became a prime example of how online planned actions can differ greatly from the original intent. Nevertheless, it left a noticeable mark on internet culture history. Moreover, the event once again confirmed Bob Lazar's significance to the public. After all, its creator had been directly inspired by the podcast that aired just days before. The Storm Area 51 event was not organized by accident. During Joe Rogan's podcast featuring Bob Lazar, many declassified documents were discussed. Documents that, according to some, confirmed that Lazar was not lying. In the late 2010s, an event occurred that shocked the public, including ufologists. Some documents related to the activity of Area 51 were declassified following researcher requests through the Freedom of Information Act. Among the published materials were reports on various experiments related to aerodynamics and materials science. Additionally, these documents contained references to aircraft featuring technologies far ahead of current standards. Although detailed technical specifications were not made public, the mere fact that such aerial vehicles were being studied on the base partially confirms Lazar's claims. Another fascinating point was that certain technical terms and descriptions of technologies matched those used by Lazar. Particularly shocking was an analysis of technical specifications describing materials with anomalous properties. The podcast also included expert opinions suggesting that some experimental developments might actually have involved studying genuinely unusual technologies. This especially related to references to the development of new types of fuels and power systems, details that aligned with Lazar's statements about element 115. When Lazar first spoke about this in the late 1980s, element 115 had not yet been discovered and was considered science fiction. However, in the year 2003, Russian scientists synthesized element 115 in a laboratory. It was named moscovium. Although the synthesized isotope is unstable and decays within fractions of a second, the fact of its existence confirmed part of Lazar's statements. The declassified documents also included information on experiments involving materials with unusual physical properties. These properties matched Lazar's descriptions of components of alien spacecraft. For example, there were mentions of materials with hardness comparable to stainless steel, consistent with his descriptions of aircraft construction. Lazar's accounts were further supported by advanced developments from defense contractors such as Lockheed Martin Skunk Works. Within these programs, the U.S. Air Force has indeed studied concepts of gravitational and exotic propulsion. NASA has also explored space-time distortion as a future means of propulsion. All these details were thoroughly discussed by Lazar and Joe Rogan. Special attention during the podcast was given to the technical aspects described in the documents. Experts pointed out that some of the solutions and approaches found in the declassified materials were indeed ahead of their time. This raises the possibility that previously unknown principles of physics may exist. During the discussion, references were also made to experiments with new types of engines and control systems, potentially indirect confirmation of Lazar's claims about the development of anti-gravity technologies. Although no direct proof was presented, the technical consistencies sparked considerable interest among researchers. Many specialists believe the published documents represent only a small portion of the information related to the facility's operations. Alongside podcast guests and listeners, Joe Rogan discussed possible reasons why some technologies might have been classified. Experts suggested this could be due not only to military secrecy, but also to the need to protect intellectual property or prevent the premature release of technologies with revolutionary potential for science and engineering. Some listeners concluded that the U.S. government deliberately hides details about Area 51 developments to conceal actual contact with extraterrestrial civilizations. It is important to note that Area 51 is certainly not the only secret military site in the country, but it is the one the authorities work hardest to keep silent about. It is unlikely that such secrecy exists solely to prevent leaks about conventional aircraft technology. Joe Rogan's podcast addressed not only declassified documents, but also discussed several photographs. In recent years, the U.S. government has published many images related to secret bases, including some from the Area 51 region. Among the materials were aerial photos of Groom Lake Base, revealing its infrastructure. The images showed runways, hangars, and testing zones. They also captured technological installations with non-standard architecture and specialized equipment, as well as custom-shaped chambers and tech units with no known analogs. The materials used in the structures demonstrated unusual reflectivity, and the power systems shown did not match any known technology. Interestingly, the photos also featured disc-shaped aircraft with distinct structural features. Some of the objects lacked traditional means of movement, such as wings, jet trails, or rotors, which closely matched Lazar's descriptions of gravitational propulsion. Skeptics argue that the images may simply show secret military prototypes, similar to how the classified U-2 aircraft were once mistaken for UFOs. However, even these aircraft appear to exist beyond the boundaries of conventional Earth aviation. After the publication of the photos, large-scale image analysis began. Digital experts performed examinations for signs of editing and compared the objects with known technologies. Specialists attempted to model the captured vehicles to assess their physical characteristics and conducted contextual analysis to determine possible uses. Photo analysts examined the images for authenticity, paying special attention to shadows, lighting, and object scale. Critical observations focused on possible signs of digital editing, but only in areas where no visible objects were present. This may suggest that the U.S. government revealed only a small part of what actually exists at Area 51. The declassified materials do not offer undeniable proof of extraterrestrial technology, but they do reveal the context of secret and advanced military developments that could explain many of the mysterious UFO sightings. Lazar's return and the document disclosures sparked a new wave of discussion about what might really be happening inside Area 51. After Bob Lazar appeared on Joe Rogan's podcast, that was not his only public appearance. The former secret base employee gave several more interviews, including in the documentary Bob Lazar, Area 51 and Flying Saucers, released in the year 2021 by director Jeremy Corbell. In it, Lazar again claimed that he had worked on an extraterrestrial craft at the S4 facility. He also said that he had been threatened for revealing information and pointed out that the government was not merely studying aliens, but trying to reverse engineer gravity-based propulsion. According to him, scientists were divided into isolated teams, each working on a specific part of the technology without knowing the full picture, to prevent information leaks. Bob Lazar was not the only person who tried to bring public attention to what the government was hiding. David Grush, a former intelligence officer from the U.S. Department of Defense who was part of a special task force studying unidentified aerial phenomena, recently testified before the United States Congress. His testimony caused widespread public reaction and drew attention from both supporters and skeptics of extraterrestrial presence theories. In his statements, Grush made several sensational claims. He stated that the U.S. government had, for decades, possessed not only unidentified aircraft but also biological remains of non-human origin. These claims were based on his direct access to classified materials and information obtained through a special program. Grush emphasized that his information came from credible sources within government agencies. He stated that many of these materials were classified at the highest level, which made it difficult to release them. According to him, some of the technologies and biological samples had been recovered following incidents involving unidentified aerial objects. Another informant on secret government programs is Dr. Stephen Greer. He has compiled an extensive collection of evidence for the existence of extraterrestrial civilizations, including thousands of pages of documents and more than 120 hours of audio recordings of testimonies from government officials. One of the key pieces of evidence is the testimony of Stephen Lovkin, a former assistant to President Eisenhower, who claimed he personally saw wreckage from alien spacecraft. Another significant case was investigated by John Callahan from the Federal Aviation Administration. He described an incident involving a Japanese Boeing 747 airliner that encountered a UFO over Alaska in the year 1986. Callahan attempted to track the object using radar. Greer claims that the evidence he collected is supported by testimony from other former military pilots and CIA personnel. His archive contains documents detailing UFO sightings, their movements, and even attempts to intercept them by military forces. He emphasizes that many of the documented cases are linked to sightings near nuclear facilities. According to him, such sightings significantly increased after the development of nuclear weapons, possibly indicating extraterrestrial interest in Earth's military technologies. All these materials, according to Greer, are stored securely and can be made public if necessary. He also notes that many individuals within government agencies support the idea of disclosing this information to the public. Bob Lazar's statements align with the testimonies of David Grush and Stephen Greer, all of whom confirm the existence of secret programs aimed at studying alien technologies and biological remains. This once again gives reason to reconsider doubts about Lazar's truthfulness. Perhaps Lazar's identity was deliberately erased from university and workplace records to make the public believe that this man was simply lying. As mentioned above, Bob Lazar is not the only person who chose to reveal the secrets of the American government, and his story is only one of many mysteries the U.S. authorities are allegedly hiding. There are numerous other cases involving unidentified flying objects that also remained classified for a long time. Here are just a few examples. In July of the year 1947, near the city of Roswell in the state of New Mexico, a strange flying object crashed. The military quickly confiscated the debris and began examining it. The official version that it was a weather balloon failed to convince the public, especially due to inconsistent explanations from the military and their attempts to cover up details. Local residents, familiar with actual weather balloons, understood that what had happened had nothing to do with them. This story became known as the Roswell incident. What exactly fell from the sky that night remains a mystery, as all documents related to the event are still classified. In the year 2004, another notable case occurred, the Tic Tac incident. In November, the U.S. military conducted exercises in the Pacific Ocean near the border of Mexico and the United States. The carrier strike group of the USS Nimitz and the cruiser Princeton detected an unidentified flying object. According to the pilots, the object had the shape of a smooth white ellipsoid measuring between 9 and 14 meters in length. Its movements were captured on an aircraft infrared camera. These videos were first leaked in the year 2007 and then again in the year 2017. In the year 2020, the Pentagon officially published the original footage on its website, confirming that the videos were indeed taken by Navy pilots. Another fascinating chapter in the history of UFO observation is Project Blue Book. This project lasted from the year 1952 to the year 1969. During this time, more than 12,000 reports of unidentified flying object sightings were reviewed. Although most of the cases were explained, some remained unresolved. The project generated a lot of controversy, especially after some researchers noticed that the government seemed to be intentionally hiding evidence of alien contact. All of these cases demonstrate that the story of Bob Lazar is not the only mystery related to unidentified flying objects. Many believe the authorities are concealing far more. Each of these events raises numerous questions and remains a subject of ongoing debate and discussion. Public perception of UFOs is gradually changing, but society is not yet fully ready to accept the potential consequences of such revelations. And that's all from me. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell. Your support is the best reward for me. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Bye.